Thank you.
Okay, Frank, this is Dale. I guess I've joined you now.
Good morning, Dale. How are you?
Thanks.
Brooke and Heather, this is Jyoti speaking. If you have control of the names for the commissioners, if their name doesn't reflect their legal name, would you please modify it to make it clear who the commissioners are?
It is 10 o'clock, and I'm going to call this meeting of the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission to order. Commissioners, would you please let me know if you are Frank Thorwald, Dale, I know you're here there, Mr. Cooper.
Right.
Other commissioners, are you with us yet? Mr. Conway? Mr. Farbrand? Let's give them another moment or two. Staff, could you check with them? Have they said they would be attending? Chris, have they said, did they say they would be attending?
They did all confirm the state. You can reach out to them.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
They did all confirm this date and time, so I will reach out to them.
Oh, yeah, they did all confirm, she said, yeah.
Okay, great. I'll give them another moment or two. We have a quorum, but I don't want to, if we can just wait a minute or two, I apologize for the delay for the other two commissioners. Rookie, were you able to reach them?
We're working on it right now.
Okay. Let me know when we can proceed. Normally, I would just go ahead and go, but since we have some introductions today and some new people, I'd like them to know who they are. Rookie, was there any success? I'm going to go ahead and proceed, and they can just join us later. I apologize. For the delay.
Okay, that sounds good. We tried to reach out to Bill and he didn't answer his phone, so I think that's okay.
We have a quorum, so let us proceed. Today, we have the new land commissioner with us, Robin Sayed. Robin, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Robin Sayed. I am the new state land commissioner. I've been in the role since about mid-March. This is my first meeting. It's good to see all of you, see your names, and put faces to names. So I look forward to participating on this commission. And I also want to acknowledge my colleague David Haig is here. You may know him, but he is our minerals section manager. So he will be involved with this group if for some reason I can't attend. He will be here and keeping tabs on all the work as well.
Fantastic. Appreciate it. Thank
Sure,
you for
thank you.
joining us today. We also have a new administrator, Chris Schmidt. Chris, would you tell us, give us a little background on yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here this morning as well. And right as Robin said, it's good to put names and faces together. Unfortunately, I'm sorry I'm not on camera this morning. I had a motorcycle accident this past Tuesday, so I have some facial abrasions, so I didn't want to appear on camera this morning, but I can assure you next one I will. Yeah, I just started the role this past week, and my background is in petroleum and chemical engineering. I was also in the consulting, in the environmental consulting business for about 7 or 8 years, sold equipment for about 8 years, and then taught for a little while, and then joined ADEQ here about 2 years ago. So, so I'm looking forward to working with the commission and everybody on board. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. We also have Administrative Services Officer Holly Morton. Holly, would you introduce yourself, please? Give us a little background.
Good morning. I'm Holly Morin. I'm the new Administrative Services Officer for the oil and gas team. And I joined ADEQ almost a month ago.
And what does your position do?
I'm going to be focusing on the finances for the grant that we received from DOI. I think that's my primary role right now. And I'm also working on the fee study, working with Polak a little bit on the fee study that he's going to be preparing.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
We also have Josie Belgian, who has been our AG's representative for some time now, who has done an outstanding job for us, and is leaving. I hate to see her go, but I want to thank her for all of her great services that she's provided to the commission, and introduce her replacement, Adam Stafford. Adam, could you tell us a little about yourself?
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Yes, I'll be taking over for Josie, representing the commission. I have some big shoes to fill, but I will do my best. I'm also the Attorney General's designee on the Arizona Power Plant and Transmission Line Siting Committee. So that takes quite a bit of my time. I actually had 2 hearings this week.
Oh, fantastic. Well, welcome aboard. Appreciate you being with us.
Mr. Chairman, this is Jyoti. If I could just make one quick comment. I've had a very short time of working with Heather, Adam, and Chris in that order. And I just want to say personally, I've really enjoyed the short time I've had to work with them, and they're special people and special professionals. So the commission is very fortunate.
Well, thank you, Josie, and we wish you all the best in the future, your future endeavors. Moving on to item 6, discussion and appropriate action by commission, spacing exceptions. With our new administrator, would you please take us through each one of these things, starting with Desert Mountain Energy?
Mr. Chairman, I apologize for interrupting you, but I don't believe that we cleared the conflicts of interest after we did the quorum.
Oh, you're completely correct. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Is there any conflicts of interest? Hearing none, we'll move on. And again, thank you, Commissioner Cooper. my oversight. Administrator, would you please discuss all of this? I apologize. I'm having to get used to Mr. Schmidt's last name. So
That's
Administrator,
okay. No problem. Yes, today we have 3 spacing exceptions for the on a group of wells for the commission to evaluate and vote on. The first one is Desert Mountain Energy Corporation, the spacing exception for 3 wells. It's the Desert Mountain 24-1 located in section 24, township 18 north and range 15 east. The second one is Desert Mountain 30-1 state, located in section 30, township 18 north, range 16 east. And the last one, and the reason why I'm grouping them together, and I'll explain in a moment, is the Desert Mountain OHACO 29-1, located in section 29, township 16 north, range 14 east. Desert Mountain Energy here is represented by Marta Wesco, and she will be providing her justification and presentation to the commission on the spacing exception request. We have the applications for all of these wells on file. We've been through the applications and they are all administratively complete. And so I don't see any problems or issues on the applications themselves. And so depending on how the commission votes on the spacing exceptions, we will either proceed towards approval, or depending on any conditions that the commission may impose, depending on how things go with the vote, to get any further information or any questions answered prior to approving the permits. So is Marta here this morning? I haven't seen.
I'm here.
Oh, hey Marta, how you doing?
Hey, I'm good.
So yeah, so that's the update on the permit applications themselves. So I don't see again any rationale or anything for disapproving those, depending on, like I said, how the vote on the spacing exceptions go.
Administrator Schmidt,
Yes.
item 3, Desert Mountain OHACO
Right.
29-1, is
Right.
that complete?
Yes, we have all of the information in for that application. Yes.
For the surveys, everything is in?
Yeah. So the permit application, all of the information accordance with rule that we need to make a determination on approval or not of the application. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Marta, would you make your presentation?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for having us here. Nice to meet you, Chris. Congrats on the new role.
Thank you.
Hopefully next time I can see you.
Yes.
Appreciate communicating with you over the last week. Anyways, yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in. So Desert Mountain Energy is seeking approval, like Chris said, for 3 spacing exceptions for new applications for permits to drill. You already went over the specific locations, so we can just jump to the next slide. I don't know if I have control or not. Awesome. All right, so like Chris kind of said, this is kind of grouped in 2 categories. So 2 of the wells are located in one area of interest and the other is located in a second area of interest. So I'm kind of going to start jumping in on the first 2, which are adjacent leases. So the first 2 locations are located in Desert Mountain Energy's area of interest we call the South Winslow area of interest. They're located in section 24 and 30. On the next slide, you'll see that those are diagonal slides to each, or diagonal locations to each other. Basically, the reason for Desert Mountain Energy requesting this spacing exception request is that these wells are targeting a mapped structural high in the area. We believe by moving these well locations closer to the corners of the sections, it'll allow us to target the highest point on that structure. And so that's what we're seeking to target within the Redwall and Martin formations. This map here that you can see is kind of showing our position in the South Winslow prospect. So the blue sections are fee leases that we hold, and then the green sections are Arizona State Land Department leases that we hold. The two sections in question are within the Arizona State Land lease 13-12-1544. You can kind of see that in the kind of center bottom of the map. There's two adjacent leases under that number along the red line down the center. We can jump to the next slide. All right, this is kind of a more zoomed in look at those two sections and the actual well locations. The wells are located in section 24. That well is located 660 off the east line and 1280 off the south line. And then in section 30, the well is located 670 off the west line and 1315 off the north line. Also, DME owns the parcel, the 40-acre parcel just to the north and east of those two well locations for access to those state sections.
Pardon me, I have a question here. Why is the O'Hare location not shown on these maps?
So the Oaxaca location is going to be in a separate area of interest that's many miles away. So I will show it in a couple slides towards the end of the presentation. That's why I said I'm going to kind of group these in two categories. The first request being 2 wells, but they're individual applications to drill, not an area-wide request of any sort. These are individual requests. And then the third one, I'll go over the last couple slides, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. All right, we can jump to the next slide. All right, so basically justification, we're very broad. I used these maps the last presentation as well. Holbrook Basin, we're targeting some of the lower formations that sit on top of basement. So the Martin and Redwall formations, approximately 3,600 feet. In depth to those formations, give or take a few hundred feet, depending on the specific well location. So not looking to target the shallow formations, nothing adjacent to any of the aquifers in the area. We can jump to the next one. All right, so now we're looking zoomed in even further, kind of on each specific location. I just wanted to be able to give you a look at what the proposed access to those locations. The GFOPs for each of these locations have been completed and submitted to the Arizona State Land Department and are currently under review, have not been approved yet. So understand if that ends up being some sort of contingency. We completely anticipate that, and that's okay. We can jump to the next one unless you want to take a look at that one any further. And then, just another zoomed in of topography, what we're looking at for those specific locations here. And the orientation of the structural high is kind of a northwest, southeast oriented trend. It is pretty circular feature. So it kind of requires us to stay pretty tight into those corners in order to accurately target those features. I believe our intention is to drill section 30 first, if I remember correctly. And then these other location would be drilled a little bit further down the line.
Hey, Marta, this is Joe Dixon for State Land.
Yes.
I think you referred to this as the South Winslow area.
Yes.
Okay, where is this in relation to the plant that you're going to be putting in? I think it's kind of the northeast a little bit. Or where the
yeah, we're going to be north. This is going to be northwest of where our plant is. So our plant is located on our McCully area of interest, right, which is, so gotta remember what the highway numbers are. This is about 6 miles south of the city of Winslow. So pretty close to the city limits there. And then the Oaxaca area is, you're talking more, I think it's like 10 miles, a little bit more southeast of the city of Winslow.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions with respect to those first two, or I can move on to the Oaxaca area?
You may have covered that in your write-up. This is Dale Nations. Are these seismically located structures, or are they based upon just subsurface, other subsurface?
This is based on subsurface mapping at this point.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Hey, Marta, this is Administrator Schmidt. I just wanted to say, when you get the approval, are you willing to submit the copies of the letters or the GFOPs?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm under the impression that David would copy the administrator on that approval, but if not, I would absolutely forward it along.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
This is David Haig from the Arizona State Land Department. We always copy the administrator when we approve for well locations and things like that.
Okay, thanks, David.
And obviously, knowing that information, knowing that we're still pending the approval of the GFOP, we would understand if that would be a contingent approval for these well locations. All right, if there's no more questions, I'm happy to jump over to the third location on the next slide. Is going to be our Oaxaca area of interest. So here I kind of gave more of a broad view like I did in the South Winslow prospect. This we're now talking, I want to say we're like about 20 miles south of the city of Winslow, so a bit further south. And I think you're between Highway 99 and 87. Is where our prospective area is going to be, but pretty due south of the city of Winslow. And so the first well of interest, so this is our acreage position that we've leased. And so kind of along those lines, we hold all of the adjacent leases to this section, and therefore with the requirement within the Arizona State Land or the Arizona Oil and Gas Commission's requirement to notify adjacent leaseholders, lessees, we hold all of the leases, so we did not submit any documentation for notification, though on the previous South Winslow prospect areas, we did submit that with our application, the copies of the notices that we sent out. But the position here is basically just showing you in blue is the Arizona State Land Department leases that we hold, and then, or in green, I apologize, and in blue are the private leases with the Oaxaca family that we hold. There are two other mineral lessees on state land leases, but they're not within the 1 mile buffer area. Those are indicated in red. And then we can jump to the next slide. All right, so this is section 29, specifically where our location is. The well is located 640 off the south line, and then 1094 off the west line. Again, this is targeting a mapped structural high. This structural high is kind of more an elongated anticlinal feature that trends to the northeast. And so our intention is to continue to explore that feature in the future, but this is just the first of our prospective well locations that we want to try. And then, but any specific questions about this one, I didn't really provide anything else. This is on private land, so there's not a GFOP approval contingent on this one. But any questions, feel free to let me know. I'm happy to explain further.
Commissioners, do you have any questions for Marta Houghton? Any questions on any of the things?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Cooper.
Please proceed, Commissioner.
Thank you. Not so much a question on the presentation. Ms. Wasco was our former Oil and Gas Commission, and I believe that on June 1st of last year, she took this job, and I just wanted to make sure that we had cleared that 1-year conflict of interest under the Arizona conflict of interest statutes. And I believe that we have, but I just want to confirm it on the record.
Thank you. Let me ask our AG's office to make a confirmation on that.
Adam, before you answer, I just want to clarify Mr. Cooper's question. So there are general conflict of interest statutes that apply to current state employees. That's not applicable here. What Mr. Cooper is asking about is statutory requirements on exiting state employees that are in Arizona Revised Statute Title 38, Public Officers and Employees. So Adam, go ahead.
Yes, I believe that she was an employee of ADEQ and not the commission itself. So the 1 year time frame would not apply to the commission, it would apply to DEQ. That is my understanding of the statute. Jyoti, you concur with that?
Adam and I are in agreement.
I was just merely pointing out ARS 38-504, and if the attorneys are good with that, then that's fine with me. I just wanted to make sure that we had no issue.
Yes, Mr. Cooper, you are correct. That is the applicable statute, and there is no issue for the reason Adam stated. Marta was legally an employee of Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. So those limitations in the statutes that you're looking at apply to any appearance before ADEQ and not this commission.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cooper, for pointing that out. Commissioners, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, this is Dale Nations. I have a motion.
Please proceed, Mr. Nations, Commissioner Nations.
I move to approve spacing exceptions for the locations of the Desert Mountain 24-1, 30-1 proposed wells, and the Oaxaca 29-1 proposed well.
Commissioner Cooper, does that motion also include stipulation that the 24-1 and the 30-1 have approval from the State Land Department?
Mr. Chairman, if the vice chairman is willing to amend his motion, that would be my second.
Mr. Commissioner Nations, does that your motion include that?
Yes, that would be fine.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. The motion carries. Moving on to B, Administrator Schmidt, could you please fill us in on that?
Yeah, yes, good morning again. Myriad Resources, LLC, spacing exception will be presented by Brittany Roth, who is here, I saw this morning. And this is for the Aztec, the well Aztec 1-35, located in section 35, Township 17 North, range 19 East. We do have their permit on file, and it is administratively complete up to this point. And so depending on how the commission acts and votes on the spacing exception, we will either move forward with approval of the permit, or depending on what conditions are imposed by the commission to fulfill those prior to issuing any approval or not.
I just, Chairman Thorwald, I want to ask one quick question here before we proceed.
Mm-hmm.
On the last one, you had not mentioned that there had not been a land approval on 24-1 and 30-1.
Right.
Do they have the state land approval, or is this on private land?
This is a private one.
Okay, thank you.
Believe. Yeah.
Brittany, do you have
Commissioner Nations here? I failed to find any information on this proposed well in our materials. Now, I'd like a little explanation of the drilling objectives and the basis for location of the proposed well with a spacing exception.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, did you want Ms. Roth to go ahead and clarify that for you, Mr. Nations, Commissioner Nations, for you, or did you want me to look up that information for you?
Well, yes, if she can clarify it, that would be fine.
Sure.
Sure thing.
First of all, good morning, commissioners and staff, and welcome, Administrator Schmidt. We thank you all for your time today. My name is, welcome, sir. My name is Brittany Roth, and I'm an engineer with Myriad Resources. And I have with me today Mr. Rob Sterling, who is our Vice President of Geology.
Good morning, all.
And Mr. Nations, we will start by answering your questions. This exploratory well is targeting several intervals, potentially. The Big A Butte and Amos Wash formations, Permian formations, and the Martin, which is Devonian, and then we'll also be looking at the Precambrian. So we are proposing this wellbore to be, I'll just kind of run through this slide, and I think it will answer your other question about where this well is. First of all, Arizona Administrative Code, which you probably all know by now after hearing multiple of these, but it states that no well drilled for gas shall be closer than 1,660 feet from the boundary of its drilling unit, unless granted by exception. So today we are asking for an exception for our proposed Aztec 1-35 well. This well is proposed to be located in section 35 of township 17 north, range 19 east. And this falls in, it's like south central Navajo County. If you look on the map in the southwest corner of the map there, far southwest, there's a little dot showing whereabouts in the state it is. And the actual wellhead for this vertical well is proposed to be 670 feet from the west line. So that's where it is within that setback, and then 1,800 feet from the south line. The other items that I would point to on this map is that in yellow is Myriad's leasehold position. And so 8 of the 9 sections surrounding this proposed well, and the closest section to where this well encroaches upon is part of Myriad leasehold. Did that answer your questions, Mr. Nations?
One more, what would be the proposed depth?
The proposed depth for this well is 3,900 feet.
And location is based upon what kind of information?
I'll be running through that, sir.
Yeah, that was a great segue. So Mr. Sterling will explain the geological reasons for why we want to place this wellbore here. So
let's look at the next slide.
Okay, hey, before you do that, this is Joe Dixon for State Land. Again, I was just curious, looking at my land map here, if I'm reading it correctly, I think section 36 in 17 north, 19 east, and 2 and 4, and 16 north, 19 east. I think those are all state land sections. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir. Yes. Those 2 sections are state land, and the others are all fee. I should have shown that on the map. My apologies.
All right.
Okay. Mr. Schmidt, could we go to the next slide, please?
There we go. So this is familiar. Marta just used a similar cross-section and map. We're going to be targeting, as Brittany said, the some Permian zones that we've seen some helium. We're looking for helium here, and then also the Martin and the Mississippian Leadville or Redwall, I believe it's called locally here, as well as the Precambrian sand at the base of all of the Paleozoic section and Precambrian, fractured Precambrian. We drilled a well here in 2021. There's not a lot of information in this presentation on that well because the well is still confidential, and I can see all of the eyeballs on the screen here. So I'll not be talking much about that, but Mr. Nations, everything that we want to do in this well is germane to what we found in that well. And let's go to the next slide. But I first want to cover a concept, a phenomenon that occurs in a lot of different oil and gas basins, and it is certainly a prevalent feature in the Holbrook Basin as well, and that is the hydrodynamic flow of water that is introduced into the various formations in the Mogollon Rim, and that water creates a hydrodynamic flow situation, and that can cause, in certain conditions, the gas water table in a reservoir to tilt. And this is unusual. Usually gas and water equilibrate to a level point. That's what the basis of any carpenter's tool is designed to work off of. But if you're in an area where there is hydrodynamic flow in a porous reservoir, you can drag the gas content down in the direction of hydrodynamic flow. And with that said, and that's kind of the basis of the theory, these cartoons, the next slide will show a real world example of that in the Holbrook Basin. And that is the, yeah, there we go. This is the Pinadome field. And this is just one of the two larger pools there at Pinadome, which is east of Holbrook, about 35 miles east of the petrified forest. And this produces out of the Coconino sandstone. And what people figured out when they drilled this back in the 1950s is that the gas water interface on this had a significant tilt to it, almost 45 feet per mile, which is very unusual. These papers from, I've got a 1969 thesis here that has a contour map on that gas water interface, as well as a cross-section from a 2019 paper from Mr. Ballard that shows a cross-section of the same thing. So knowing that this is a phenomenon, we did a couple of things after we drilled our well. So if we go to the next slide, I can get a little more specific as to our location. What I have here on the left is a structural cross-section that goes from surface into the basement. Depth-wise, approximately 4,100 feet is all that's represented here. We encountered helium in the Mississippian and the Devonian and the Precambrian in unique reservoirs, separate reservoirs in this 3-1. I don't have the logs turned on because, as I said, this well is still confidential. But after we drilled that well, we also were a little confused about the presence of water in this very up-dip location. On the right is a structure map on the Mississippian Leadville Formation, or Red Wall, as it's called here. And the structure map shows a structure that's covering section 2, 3, 34, and 35 as a closed feature. And we drilled a series of shallow water wells last year down to about the depth of 600 to 700 feet to get some structural horizons that we could do a better job of building a contour, an understanding of the subsurface structure out here. And based on those, and another thing that we did out here, and there's this sort of purple outline, we did a large, about a 9 square mile surface geochem survey out here where we took samples, air samples from 3 feet down in the soil and put those into a little sample tube. And then that was all analyzed in a laboratory, and we analyzed for helium and hydrogen. And we found anomalies for both. Right now, all of you, we're all breathing about 5 parts per million helium. The anomaly is anything greater than that. And the outline that we have here shows the what we observed on the surface that was greater than 5 ppm of helium in the samples, in the soil sample gas. So we think that the fact that this is offset slightly from the apex of the structure would suggest that we possibly have a similar situation to Pinadome with a tilted gas water interface. However, I don't want to go too far down dip, even though this anomaly covers a large area, because I still am a conventional oil and gas guy and worry about a flatter gas water table than Pinadome. So we assumed 10 feet per mile rather than 40 because the rock here is not as permeable as the Coconino sandstone. So even though there might be the same sort of hydrodynamic flow and hydrodynamic head, which it would be the water pressure pushing the gas, with the lower perm, we may not be dragging it down as far down dip. But we want to drill the well here within the exceptional area, which I show the area that would be a legal location in that dashed black box in section 35, just to make sure we're not too far down dip on the structure, but we're within the surface helium anomaly that we saw on our gas, our soil, geochem surface soil anomaly. And that's pretty much it if you have any questions.
Commissioner Nations, did that answer your questions?
That was a very thorough answer. I appreciate that. And I endorse the concept, not that anybody's asking me to. But I have a question about the permeability in the red wall. Leadville for you, red wall for me. Do you have good figures on the permeability over in this particular area?
No, sir, I wish I did. The rock looks beautiful on the logs. And I've studied the Leadville red wall all over the Rocky Mountain regions. I've been involved in producing oil out of it in the North Dakota up in the Williston Basin. It extends that far. Of course, every time I drive through Glenwood Canyon, I look up and admire the beautiful dolomitic porosity that you can see in the cliffs on the side of the Glenwood Canyon here in Colorado. And we've also looked at well performance in probably the closest basin that has a lot of data available for this is the Paradox Basin up in Utah. And there's a field called Lisbon that has produced a tremendous amount of gas and oil and water from the Leadville or red wall out of a very, very nicely dolomitized portion of the rock. And it's much thicker up there. The overall section is about 400 feet thick and the porosity is about 120 feet thick. We're looking here with the red wall. It's probably going to be in the 70 to 80 foot zip code. And the Martin here is about, gross thickness is about 75 feet. Net thickness is less than that. I won't say how much to this crowd, but there are zones with porosity and zones with less porosity. I don't have sidewall or core information to give you the exact answer that you're looking for this exact area. But on this well, we plan on taking some sidewall cores to answer that question for ourselves.
How about cavernous potential?
Not here. Not here. We would have seen some indications of that while drilling the Aztec 3-1.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
This is Joe Dixon for State Land again. I was just kind of curious. You got a bunch of old wells showing there. It looks like there are 4 of them in section 34, and then there's one just northeast of your 135 set there in section 35. Where are those wells you guys have drilled, or those older ones?
Well, 3 of them are the wells we drilled. The one circle in section 35, just next to the star, is a well we drilled I think 650 feet last year. And then we just immediately abandoned it. We were looking, and we did run logs in it. The logs for that are on the, I lied, it was 850 feet. The gamma ray log for that well is on the cross section. And we were able to see the top of the Schnebly Hill formation. It's kind of a funny name, but if you've ever driven through Sedona, that beautiful red rock, that's the Schnebly Hill, which is underneath the Coconino. It's a conformable surface, so I can build a structure map based on where I see that. So there was one well in section 34 and one well in 26 that we drilled. The other circles in section 34 they're on your state website as wells, water wells that somebody else drilled in the past. I think as mineral exploration wells, to be specific. I don't think they were drilled for water. I never found any records on those wells, so we had to drill another well in the middle of them for our own purposes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I assume most of those are pretty shallow too then?
Correct.
Yeah, those are all shallow water wells.
Everything less than 900 feet.
Okay,
They don't show up on the commission's mapping. I don't
okay, thanks.
You know, in a basin like this, sir, I have to use all of the data that's available. You have to be pretty thorough and then we've also been out here doing field work. So.
And I guess, Chris, if you could go to the final slide, we'll just recap the key points here. So we're just requesting the exception for the single well, section 35, township 17 north, range 19 east. Where we encroach is 670 feet from the west line, offset to which we have leasehold. We believe this placement targets our best chance of intersecting gas and potential tilted gas water interface. And I just wanted to confirm with the commission that we have notified all contiguous lessee and mineral owners of this proposed exception and sent the full permitting package as of April 28th. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
This is Chairman Thorwald. I have a question. What methods of drilling are you planning on using on this well?
We'll start off with air, sir, and then at some point, probably just about at the Amos Wash, after we set our surface pipe, we'll probably have to switch over to drilling mud. And one of the things we're going to try to do here is use a lighter mud system, maybe even an aerified mud system, because the basin generally is under pressure. And we don't want to have too much formation damage by using a conventional drilling mud system.
And it will be freshwater mud.
Okay. Administrator Schmidt, do you have any other recommendations on this?
No other, I mean, everything information looks to be complete, and I don't have any concerns or issues right now at this time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is Dale Nations.
Go ahead.
I have a motion. I move that we grant the exception, spacing exception for the proposed Aztec 135 well, -135 well.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Cooper. I second that, but I want to make sure that they have filed with us everything that they needed. I thought that there was some discussion of that at the beginning of the presentation. The state land approval.
Is there any additional state land approval for this one that's needed? This is on private land.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't believe so.
Is that Administrator Schmidt?
Yes, sorry, Administrator Schmidt, yes.
You are on state land. You're on private land, not state land. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. And we have all of the approvals from the landowner?
Yes, all 9 offset folks.
Okay.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooper, does that answer your question?
Yes, and then on that basis, I would second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. You have your exception.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, this is Dale Nations. I'm going to need to take a short break. So
Okay.
I won't be on screen.
We'll take a 5-minute break here and reconvene in just a few moments. Brookie, while Commissioner Nations is taking a break, were you ever able to reach any of the other commissioners?
No, we were not able to get in contact with any of the other ones.
Okay, thank you. just for the record, I took the 5-minute break because without Commissioner Nations, we would not have a quorum. So Brookie, could you reach out to the other commissioners again and just try to see if they're available one more
Yes.
time?
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you. Commissioner Nations, are you back? You're on mute.
Am I back on mute?
You're on now. Thank you.
Okay.
It is 10:58 a.m. Establishing a quorum. Commissioner Nations is on. Commissioner Cooper is on, and Commissioner Thorwald is on. So we have a quorum, and we've already established there's no conflicts of interest. So let's move on to 6C, Pentadome Operating LLC, spacing exceptions. Administrator Schmidt, would you please brief us on this?
Okay, good morning again. And we have, spacing exception requests are being presented this morning by Pentadome Operating for 4 wells, actually. Pentadome operating 10-1 PR located in section 10, Township 17 North, range 25 East. Pintadome operating 12-1 PR, state located in section 12, Township 17 North, range 25 East. And then Pintadome operating 14-1, state located in section 14, Township 16 North, range 23 East. And then the last one would be Pintadome operating 16-1 PR, state located in section 16, Township 17 North, range 25 East. We do have the applications on file, and we've been through the applications for all of the wells. I do believe that Pintadome 14-1 and Pintadome 10-1 PR are state of Arizona leases, and the other two are private leases or fee leases. As of the meeting this morning, yeah, we do have all of the information on file, and it looks acceptable.
Commissioner Thorwald, do we also have the approvals from state land on those?
I have not seen those yet, as of yet, any GFOPS approval or anything yet on any state leases.
Okay. Do we have a representative from Pintadome?
Yes, I believe Joshua Hulkill.
Yes, Joshua
So
Huckel.
if I got it correct, yep, he's a representative for Pintadome who'll be presenting to the commission the spacing exception request.
Joshua, have you gotten approval from state land yet?
I believe we have across the board. A couple of them, there was, well, I think we might be still awaiting the two. We had to correct a couple things in the files, but that was submitted still prior to the deadline for this, and I think that's all we're waiting for is just those two. But they are state lands, not fee lands. Currently, all leases for Pintadome operating are on state land.
Yeah, sorry, I apologize for that.
No, yeah, that's okay. It's
Mr. Haig, has state land issued those yet? Or are they?
I just checked the files. This is David Haig. They're all still in process. We're mostly waiting on archaeology. So.
Okay, thank you, David. Please proceed, Mr. Hugo.
Yes. So yeah, archaeology has been completed by a independent third party and has all been submitted. So it'll just be a matter of getting the review. So first of all, I guess we'll just take them in the order that they're presented. Pintadome operating 10-1 PR state in section 10 of 17 North, 25 East. This section, as with all of our sections, is entirely based, our location is entirely based on our geoseismic tool, a seismoelectric device that can give a direct indication of the gases in the ground or hydrocarbons if it be. And our target zone is right at about 2,700 feet. And we're also going to, I think, drill on this one all the way down and test right there above basement as well in the Precambrian. This particular one also lines up with traditional geology that was done, early on that shows the structural high in the supine, which we can actually see based on this map. And out of everything on the section, we have reviewed, we shot all around the section, and this was one of the only really, viable spots as we saw it on this section. This one in particular is, let me see, it is 338 feet from the north line, 2,913 feet from the west line. Okay, and the next one.
Let me excuse me for a moment. I just want to mention that Commissioner Firebrand is now with us for the record.
Excellent. So the next one on the list is, let me get back to it here. Okay. next one on the list is PDO 12-1 PR, also in the Puerco Ridge area, in section 12, township 17 north, 25 east. This particular section as well, we use the same tool. We're tracking the same formation going across right at that about 2,700 foot mark. Also seeing some shows down close to basement that we want to test as well. And on this section, again, this site was minimal disturbance, just to be as cautious as possible. There was on some areas of the section on the far east some concerns of geological sites, so we wanted to avoid. This is right off the road and a really good spot to start our first test well there. And it is 243 feet from the west line, 2,620 feet from the south line. And third, we have, this actually jumps out of the Puerco Ridge area back over to the other side of the national park, is the PDO 14-1 state. That section, there would be no way to complete anything given the spacing requirements, as a quarter of that section is actually on federal lease land. But out of everywhere, we showed a couple viable spots. This one was just the best of those, and that is in section 14 of township 16 north, 23 east. The well is, let's see, 474 feet from the east line and 451 feet from the south line. That one as well, that area, the least area of concern, it'll create the least impact out of the two locations that we saw as viable locations. Also tracking that same formations on the other side of the park, roughly here though close to 2,600 feet, although showing some possible shows at about 1,700 feet as well. And then the third one, or the fourth one, excuse me, is the PDO 16-1 PR state. It's back to Puerco Ridge. This one is at 17 north, 25 east, section 16. The proposed location is 283 feet from the west line, 2,399 feet from the north line. Same here is with the others. We are entirely basing this on our seismic tool, showing that this is the best location on this section. We have adjacent sections to it on state land that we were able to find locations within the the guidelines, but this was really the only place on this section that made sense. That's it on my end, unless I've missed something and you'll have further questions.
Commissioners, questions?
This is Commissioner Nations. Yeah, you're giving depth to the objectives, but I'd like to know what the formations are.
Yes, so for Puerco Ridge in particular, we have very little data for that area. We know the one target is likely the lower Supai, maybe the big A Butte right there. In particular, could be Fort Apache, but we're pretty sure the big A Butte, and then some shows in the Naco, but primarily we want to explore that lower formation of the Supai and the permeability of the Precambrian just above basement there, just on top of the basement.
So you're looking at the Martin and the Red Wall also?
Potentially. Once again, we didn't have good data there for what the what formations were at that depth. Our tool gives a direct indicator showing the presence of helium in this case, and we can figure the depth. We see very little structure with our tool, just the actual elements in the ground.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hey, Josh, this is Joe Dixon for State Land Department. I noticed
Yes.
a couple of your presentations there. You've got the S.J. Mazzullo from May of 2019. Is that a published study or is that something you guys had done privately?
Yes, that was a private study. Third party geologist Sal Mazzullo had done for the original leaseholder that Pinto Dome Operating required the leases from.
Okay.
Any other questions? Hearing none, what is your recommendation, Administrator Schmidt?
I don't see any issues or anything right now with what's been submitted and what's been discussed. So I would say that I have no issues with the exceptions as they're presented.
Do I have a motion from one of the commissioners with regard to this? Of course, with the exception as we did for Desert Mountain Energy.
Not to be repetitive, but I could make a motion.
Go right ahead, Dale.
I move that we grant spacing exceptions as requested for the Pinto Dome 10-1 PR state and the 12-1 PR state, the 14-1 state, and the 16-1 PR state as proposed locations.
And is that contingent upon state land approval?
Yeah, I assume that that's always included, but maybe we need to specify that as well.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Cooper. I would second that as long as the requirements of meeting the approval from state land are only as to those leases that are state land leases.
Is that
I agree with that.
okay? Then everyone in favor say aye.
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 Bill, aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. You have your approval.
Thank you, commissioners.
Moving on to item number 7, Commission Administrator update by our Administrator Schmidt.
Yes, good morning once again. And so this part of the agenda, we'll be talking about permitted drilling and completions activity update for the commission. This was activity, I believe, that occurred since the last meeting, which was February 17th through today. And so we have 6 wells that have been permitted, approved permits, and some drilling activity accomplished on those. Pinto South, we have permit number 1280, which was drilled to a depth of 1,198 feet in March 20th, 2023. And currently, as far as the information that we have on file right now, they're analyzing production quality. Is there any questions on that approved permit and activity? Okay, so the second one would be Pinto South 36-1 SD permit 1277. It was drilled to 1,231 feet, March 11th, 2023. Again, same as the other one, they're analyzing production quality. And as far as the information that we have in file at this time, is there any questions on that one? Okay, and then third Pinto South 8-4 PR well, permit number 1279, drilled to 723 feet on 510. They have just recently drilled that well and shut it in, and they rigged down from that site. So that's kind of where we are at right now at this point from what the information that we have on file. Any questions from the commissioners on that?
This Commissioner Nations,
Hi,
now,
Commissioner.
there are specifications to meet the requirements for shutting a well in.
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be some potential for production before that's done. Is that correct?
I believe so, that they have to test, right?
Yes.
Yes, and I have their completion report. Let me make sure I pull it on Pinta South. That was the 8-4. Okay, just give me 1 second here. Yeah, so they don't have any testing results, Commissioner Nations. All I see is that they TD'd at 7:23 and shut in the well, broke down and moved back to the yard with the rig. But we can reach out to them to get any testing results or any of that kind of information if the commission wants.
So unless they show some potential for production, shouldn't it be called temporary abandoned?
Yeah, I would say so then. Yeah. So I don't know. I guess maybe because of their indication that it was shut in, that. But if there is no potential, then they would have to abandon it. Correct.
Yeah, at least a temporary abandonment.
Right. Right.
Yeah, but that, I think we're not meeting the requirements of our rules if we allow them to call it a shut-in well, unless there's a basis for that.
Yes, I will double check on that one. This was a well that was that was approved for a permit and to drill right before I started with the in the administrator position. So I could check on that though.
Yeah, that
just
would
make sure
also,
there's no confusion. Huh?
that would also apply to the next one you're going to cover.
Right.
This member Commissioner Thorwald, I also agree with Commissioner Nations on that.
Right.
In the transitions recently of the administrators, I feel like we've overlooked something here. So if you could go back and look at that.
Sure.
And what their applications were for shut-in status or temporary abandonment status or whatever, because there should be an application there, and this seems to be missing something.
Okay. Well then, yeah, if that one and the next one is the same kind of situation, then we will go back and look at those two for sure.
Yes, and if you could update us once you found that out.
Yes.
By email.
Yes, we'll do. Yeah. So on that one, the same thing would be for the Pinta South 34-7 as well as the 8-4. So we'll look at those and get some information back to the commission on the status of those and what's happening with them. And then the number 5 was Pinta South 26-6, permit number 1282. They drilled to a total depth of 905 feet on 5.5. And as far as I know, I don't have any further information from them on what's happening with that well, but I will check into that if need be. Is there any questions on that one?
Is there somebody here that represents the company?
I don't think there's anyone here this morning from Pinta South.
Okay.
And then the last one was Myriad Resources, Rattlesnake 121, permit 1275. Testing of zones were completed and they rigged down on 2/24/23. So I don't have any other updated information right now, but we can get some if the commission needs it. And is there any questions on that one?
This is Commissioner Nations.
Yes.
This is just kind of a general request.
Mm-hmm.
We have so much activity now,
right?
With wells that are located all over the place and different objectives, different horizons to be tested.
Right.
I think we need a table developed to keep track of these so that not only would we have that information, but maybe it could also be made available to the public, of course, with the exception of confidential wells that are held under confidential status. But I think we need a table developed on this, and including information such as you've got here, the total depth, what is drilled to, what's the current condition of the well? Is it temporarily abandoned, or is it shut in, or is it on production, and if there's could be information about production, maybe that's is confidential. I don't know, but I'd like to see as much information as possible in table form.
Yes, and that's one of the things, and I agree with you. That's one of the things that I have started since I came on board was I'm just like you. I want to know all of the details too, and so as we go through all of this and maybe doing some back checking, we'll start to fill in those any holes that are there where we want to kind of understand, what depths they were, what they're going for, what formations they may be targeting or producing out of or testing out of, and all of that kind of information. So yeah, not only proceeding forward, gathering all or having all of that information, but then start kind of retroactively going back and filling that in one summary.
And of course, that would identify the well by well number and drilling permit number and anything like that.
Yes, exactly. It would be right from a stem to from all the way across the board, right? What permit was approved, the number, the well ID, where it is, all of that kind of information. Sure, so that at a glance you could see all of the details about what was done, when it was drilled, when it was completed, and kind of the current status of it. Sure.
Good.
Yeah. That's something that is on my definite list of to-dos when I started to do all of that. So yeah, so we'll kind of definitely going forward, but also maybe trying to look back at the last some of the previous wells here recently that have been approved.
Good. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Commissioner Cooper, Commissioner Firebrand, any thoughts on that?
I don't have any.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I also agree. If you could, Administrator Schmidt, if you could go back and get that information and find out where we're at, and make sure that this has been appropriately addressed.
Yep.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay, now we have your other two wells that you needed to.
The Pinda South 26, I think I talked about 26-6 PR, state permit 1282. That was the one that they drilled to 905 and finished on 5/5/2023. And then Myriad Resources was the Rattlesnake 1-21, permit 1275. They tested, the testing of their zones were completed, and they rigged down in February. So that was kind of what prompted the conversation about not only the two wells in question, but, getting information on some of the details of, status and some of those things, and what were the zones and where did they complete and what formations.
Very good. Do you want to move on to number 8 on the orphan wells?
Sure. Just for the benefit here, this is a report on activity of the orphan well program. Just to define that an orphan well for anybody who may be listening or doesn't quite understand what an orphan well is. It's an oil or gas well that's not plugged, not producing, and has no owner or responsible party. Therefore, the well becomes a ward of the state, and so or some other government entity. So right now here that we are working with a grant to plug and abandon orphan wells. And so right now there are 13 contractors that are finishing up. The program is broken up into 3 phases. One is to kind of get an identify of the assessment and find out where the well is based on some review of data and looking at records. And then the second one is to go out and actually identify the well by physical location and actually do some testing. And then the third phase would be to plug and abandon that well. And then the fourth phase would be to clean up or remediate any problematic or environmental concerns that are surrounding the well or with the well that was plug and abandoned. So right now we have 13 contractors finishing up work on task 1, which is the site assessment. Basically, we have a couple of environmental data reports yet to receive, but they're pretty much finished with that first task. And then moving on towards task 2, which is to go out and do site characterization, that is identify the well and do some sampling if required, some soil sampling or groundwater sampling from the well. And so right now proposals are under review for that task. And so award, I guess, will be forthcoming once there's any back and forth with the contractors on finalizing those proposals. Is there any questions about that program right now? And then, oops, sorry.
Yeah, first of all, Commissioner Syed, if you have any questions or suggestions, please feel free to jump in at any point. My questions are, how many wells have we gone through, looked at this point? How many have we not? What has been found so far?
Okay, right now I believe there's 246 wells that we have identified through like a data records. So looking at, whatever it takes, aerials, all of the historical records, looking at, land ownerships and stuff like that, or where potentially they could be. We have 246 identified. I think there are some that may drop off the list based whether there are water wells or currently under some active operating company at all. So right now, I think we have some that we've identified. I don't know the exact number. I think maybe it was 12, somewhere around 12, but we are looking at that more closely as we go through that. We have not been out to, as far as I know, we have not been out to identify or put our hands on any of the wells just yet. That is what's happening in task 2, where they're actually going out now based on the information that they have to go put some physical location, put their hands on the well, and then also do some assessment work around it, determine if there's any methane emissions, or they're going to be doing some soil sampling and groundwater sampling.
This is Commissioner Nations.
Yes.
I understand this site assessment is something that requires a lot of effort and time, but have you made any attempt to actually get public input? There may be people that have a ranch or a farm that they know there's a well out there, and maybe you don't have any record of it. Have you encouraged that kind of input from the public?
Absolutely. We have a reporting tool that the public can use to report if they see anything that they suspect might be a well or anything like that. So yes, we are doing outreach with the communities to determine whether or not and help them identify themselves if it's on their property. And I believe we've had some people report. I believe there was at least 4 instances where people have self-reported through the tool that they think they have an orphan well or maybe what might be a well on their property. So yeah, we do believe that is working, and we are getting and reaching out to the communities and the landowners to try and identify what could be an orphan well or a well on their property. Yes.
Good. That's good work.
Yeah. Yeah, exciting.
Sorry, it's Bill. To develop that point a little bit more, I think on radio stations and newspapers, you could get kind of free public service information flowing out to people. And you never know, it might end up on a radio or newspaper or something that somebody picks up and calls in, and we catch another 1 or 2.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I would agree. I would agree. And I think we're looking at all of the tools available to us to be able to reach out to the communities and to the people in whatever format, whether that be through internet, social media, videos, or, postings, or any of those kinds of things. So yeah, I know we're looking, internally at a lot of those different tools. So yeah, and that's of course another couple of avenues that you could pursue, right? If it might be radio or something like that, sure.
Yeah, and then you've got the groups like the county commissioners, or maybe there's agricultural groups, that within them you could get, word out to property owners. Anyway, it was just there are different ways to kind of message the public besides. There's a lot of ways to do it. I'll leave it at that.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we are kind of going through the plethora of different ways that you could probably do that. And I think that's important to look at, to see how you can reach the most people, and especially with technology that we have today, you can reach people. I mean, I've even seen a lot of ads and things already myself on orphan wells and orphan well programs, through other states. So yes. So yeah, it's a good suggestion. I appreciate it.
This is Commissioner Thorwald. Have we talked to other associations? Obviously, what the commissioner just brought up. There's certainly the Cattlemen's Association. There's all of the various ones. Have we had any engagement with them yet?
I haven't, since coming on board, I haven't really dug into kind of what we've done before, but we can certainly look at it. And I would say those are good avenues for touching base with some of them, right? The ranchers, if there's any ranchers associations, any of those kinds of associations where we could get information too. I just don't know that on how much we've done it yet, but I know we're definitely reaching. I know we're definitely reaching out. We may have already done some of those. Have touched base with some of those associations.
Heather, any other staff have any additional information on that for the commission?
Yes, actually, this is Brooke Bolger from the oil and gas team. I did want to mention we have met with a couple other states, oil and gas states in the country, about how they handle their community engagement program. So we've gotten a lot of ideas with what we kind of want to do, and we're working on a long-term community outreach plan. We're in the works for that. So later on in the future, we'll be able to implement some of these things too. But those are all good ideas too. So thank you.
Have we talked to other state agencies about this, including DWR and land and so forth?
Did you? Oh.
This is Heather Cross, the Air Quality Division Deputy Director. Yes,
I can just barely hear you.
Oh, okay. I need to get closer. So yeah, we have met with ADWR regarding the orphan well list and confirming if any of those wells have been converted to water wells. We haven't necessarily met with them on the community outreach piece because, as Brooke stated, we continue to develop our community outreach program, but we can definitely put that on the list. And then I can work with David Haig or Commissioner Sayed on that community outreach as well.
I don't something later on, there'll be some additional things on what other states are doing that I brought back from the AZOGCC meeting, and I'll bring that up at later in the meeting today. Administrator Schmidt, you want to proceed?
Yes.
Actually, Mr. Chairman, may I make a quick comment? It's not legal. I just want everyone at the meeting to know that Chris Schmidt has only been in the administrator position for about 2 weeks, and he knows an enormous amount for the short time that he's been there. So at a future meeting, I'm sure Chris and the group would be happy to provide more detailed information on the orphan well program after they've had an opportunity to actually compile it for presentation.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Josie. That's why I wanted to mention Heather, because she's been following it a little longer and been involved more. So I didn't want Chris to feel totally on the spot.
That's okay.
Administrator Schmidt, you want to move forward?
Sure. Item 8D is the Groundwater Protection Council, which is a national nonprofit, and they are developing the Arizona Oil and Gas risk-based data management system for us to track all of these wells and doing data input and keeping all of that data on wells and all the details that go along with that. And so right now we are in testing phase of the first module, I would say. So there's a few modules, and the first module is kind of an editor module where we input a lot of background information into the database. And so we're in the process of testing that right now. There's a plugging module that's next to test, and they're working on that. And then that'll be the next step in testing that database and data input and the interface and everything there. So so we continue to be working with them on this and the contractor to get that pulled together and completed for us. So we will be testing away on that system here over the next several weeks and maybe a couple of months. Any questions on that?
Chairman Thorwald, I have a couple quick questions.
Sure.
How are we gathering the data that goes in that? How's that being assembled, and where is it coming from?
Okay, right now for testing the modules and stuff, we're pulling old permit information and just going through permit information and entering that data in to test, some of the bugs in the data, in the interface and how things are entered and those kinds of things. But ultimately, I would imagine it's going to come from all of our record. Maybe Heather or Brooke may speak to where exactly we're going to pull all that from. But I believe that's probably where the records that we do have.
Heather or Brooke, could you address that, please?
Sure, Commissioner Thorwald. Yes, so if you see in bullet 8E there, we have worked to take our about 1,400 files that we have for the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, transport those to the University of Arizona, who is painstakingly going through all of the files, and then preparing a database spreadsheet that will later be imported into the RVDMS system. So they're going through all those files currently.
Fantastic. Now, will this have any ability to do integration and expansion in the future? In other words, will we be able to communicate with other departments or agencies in this? Is that a separate module? How, as we move forward, how easy will this be to keep updated and add different portions to it?
So my understanding that the ease of updating it with new files is going to be very straightforward. That's what we're doing right now, is the testing of the database to see if there's any hiccups along the way. As far as the sharing of data, I will need to check on our contractor, who is the Groundwater Protection Council, who's assisting us with the RVDMS database development, so I can ask that specific question.
I asked that question because this is something we may at some point want to be sharing with the State Land Department or the DWR.
Yeah, I will note that and then ask at their next opportunity.
Okay, fantastic.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Nations again.
Please, Commissioner Nations.
I'm concerned about the location. I asked Chris, what's the location method? Are these wells, as you locate them, I'm talking about orphan wells, of course. Are they located GPS or, I mean, you're not doing surveys, obviously, to get good locations. So how are they located? Are they on maps or, again, in tables or what?
Yeah, I believe, and I know Brooke or Heather can speak to a little more detail, but yes, this first phase, I kind of came into the administrator position just as the first phase of this process was kind of winding down here. But my understanding is that, right, they're using all sorts of methods and tools to be able to identify. So maybe looking at different well databases, looking at, anywhere aerials, looking at all of those kinds of information, looking at landowner information, looking at those kinds of things. So,
but how are they located?
well, right now the thing is they're identifying what potentially could be wells, and so some they may identify that they are, but then going out and actually physically looking at them. So right now they're just compiling environmental data reports on what the potential, where there could be potential wells, and then actually in phase 2 we would be going out and actually trying to identify those. So like in one of the people, a person may report that they think they have an orphan well on their property, so we may go out and look at it as part of that phase 2 process. But right now it's a lot of record searching. So similar to a phase 1 environmental site assessment, they would be looking at where do they think potential wells could be, and so that's what they're doing. And then the idea in phase 2 would be actually physically going out and confirming whether or not they're there or not. So looking at ADWR records, looking at well records, looking at all sorts of different, it's more of a record search and database search, unless Brooke or Heather have anything different they're doing other than that.
Bill, I got a comment.
Go ahead, Mr. Firebrand, Commissioner Firebrand.
Okay. I'd like to push Jack's point a little bit further to say that we agree from the get-go what our coordinate system is going to be, and the end game will be all coordinates will be in that. I personally, when I'm doing field geology, I like using like WGS 84, because everything is metric on the ground, so the numbers translate directly into a distance east and west from you. But then you also get into using that method, you get into zones. And I find when I'm working on large scale maps, I prefer lat long, because then all the numbers are in a system that you just feed into your software. You don't have to worry about zones or anything like that. So, but it's just my feelings on two completely different methods. But I think we should decide what system we're going to use to record locations. And the end product will be all locations will be in that system, whether it's lat long or UTM like WGS 84 or whatever. We have a common goal. That's my comment.
Yes, thank you. And Administrator Schmidt here is I would agree that yes, we would have to have some consistent format for reporting those things, the locations of those things, so that they can easily go into a database or something, and then easily mapped or be able to be mapped easily or used in some other way. Yes, I would agree, and I believe that is the goal of phase 2 here, is to actually, when we identify, actually see the well, stand on it, locate it, then we would map that according to some coordinate system that we would agree on. Exactly.
Heather, Brookie, could you expand on any of that?
Yeah, this is Brooke Bolger from the oil and gas team. So I wanted to go back and say that Chris, Administrator Schmidt, covered the task 1 very well, finding the location just based off of files and desktop review before actually going on the field and looking for the well on foot. And then to your question about the coordinate system, so our current GIS map is on WGS 84. So that's kind of what we're leaning towards for the future, or when we get our fresh set of data, of consistent data of our wells. But we are still undecided, but that is what we're leaning towards.
Commissioners, any other questions or recommendations?
This is Commissioner Nations again. I certainly agree with Commissioner Firebrand. This needs to be established up front. And I'm wondering if AIPG hasn't already dealt with this. I'm sorry, IOGCC. If the IOGCC must have already anticipated this with this program.
Commissioner Nations, I just came back from the IOGC. This is Commissioner Thorwald. I just came back from the IOGCC meeting, and it's been left up to the different states on what they want to do. Has been no national consensus on it.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, Administrator Schmidt, you want to move on?
Yeah, sure. Oh, thank you, Chairman. Yes, and on 8E, that follows up kind of what Brooke and Heather were talking about. University of Arizona continues to prepare the well data for incorporation into the database. So, right. I kind of mentioned about going back through file records and things like that, that we would have input into the database. And that's what right now the University of Arizona is doing for us. We're sending them paper files, and they're going through all that information and then processing that in a way that can be entered into the database. So they continue to work on that. I think that was a 3-year process that they were working on. So
this is Commissioner Thorwald again. Is that not the geologic survey within the U of A?
Yes, the Arizona Geological Survey, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a subaward to the grant, the subawardee to the grant, yes.
Proceed.
Okay, so moving on to item 9, community engagement. So the Orphan Well Program self-reporting tool we have made public, and so the URL is published on the agenda here. You could see where someone can be able to report a well that they think is on their property. They can use that tool to give us the information about it, and then we can go ahead and process that and kind of confirm or refute if there's any well located there, or get any clarifications on the reporting on that. And so 4 wells so far, as I mentioned earlier, 4 wells have been identified or at least submitted through that tool to us. And so we've processed that information and are kind of adding that to our work on identifying and locating these wells. So if someone does see a well on their property, they can use that tool to let us know, and we'll follow up with that. Are there any questions on that tool?
This is Commissioner Thorwald. Wasn't there a television primetime news story done by ADQ on this within the last month?
I don't specifically know. Heather, would Heather or Brooke know?
Yes, we did receive a media request. There was an inquiry about.
Who is this?
Oh, I'm
This is
sorry.
Heather Cross.
Heather Cross. There was a media request regarding our list of orphan wells, and the Air Quality Division Director, Daniel Checklin.
Pardon me, but this is Commissioner Nations. I really can't understand.
Oh, sorry.
We need to improve this communication process with staff.
Do you mean regarding the microphone?
No, I can hear you now.
Okay, sorry about that, Commissioner Nation. So yes, we did receive a media request that went through our ADQ PIO, Public Information Officer, and then we fulfilled the records request or the media request by providing a list of the orphaned wells, the 246 orphaned wells. And then Daniel Cheklinski, who is our Air Quality Division Director, he provided an interview.
You faded out there at the end.
This is now showing the media story.
Good, that's good.
We could send that out to the commissioners if there's interest.
One moment, Commissioner Nations, they are in temporary room today for this meeting. They have found another location that's the same location that the Department of Administration uses for Kirk. to have future meetings and future communications. And that area, there shouldn't be any problems with being able to hear like we're having today.
Good, that's good to know.
Do commissioners, do any of you want to see the ad that was done, not the ad, but the report that what the television station aired?
I don't want to see the whole thing, but I'm sure glad to see that it's been done.
Okay, great.
Bill, I'd like to look at it.
Pardon me?
Would you like to have us send it out?
Yeah,
to-
this is Bill. I would, please. Thank you.
We can do that. Thank you. This is Heather Krause.
Thank you. Any other questions on this?
Hey, Frank, this is Joe Dixon again. I had a real quick question there. The 4 wells that were submitted there, were those new ones that you actually didn't know anything about, or do you have enough information to even tell whether they may have fit into your old database or not there, like what you have on the website for well locations?
Administrator Schmidt, where are we on that?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. You wanted to know if they were new wells?
He wanted to know if they're, yes, the 4 wells that have been identified by people from the community are those new wells that were not previously identified, and what's the status of?
I believe they were reported, and we didn't have them earmarked at all from what we've had so far. But Heather or Brooke may know more. But as far as I know, there are new wells that we haven't had any information on before.
Yeah, this is Brooke Bolger. So one of them, none of them were on our oil and gas list that we have, but one of them was nearby one of the orphan wells that are on our list. And so we provided the information to the contractor that's assigned to the well that was nearby. There are 2 that, one that is, we are almost positive is a water well. And so we've let the city that it is located in know. Another one, we're still investigating what exactly it is. It doesn't appear to be an oil and gas well. It appears to be probably some sort of environmental test well, but we're not totally sure about it yet. And then the last one, the contact information that the person provided to us when they sent in the report is the phone number seems to be messed up, and so we have no way to contact that person. But we have been talking about going out to see if we can. It seems like we have at least a parcel of where the person lives, so we've talked about finding another way to get in contact with them and see if we can find the well they were reporting.
I'm just kind of curious about that too. So you're kind of depending on the general public to have some kind of a good idea of exactly what it is they're seeing and looking at, reporting here too. And you may be getting a lot of stuff in that, like I say, could be somebody's water well, or who knows.
Yeah, another thing on top of that, this is Brooke Bolger. Once our contractors start going out and doing site characterization, we are asking them to take photos of the orphan wells that they do find, so that we can provide an example of what an orphan well may look like to the public, so they have a better understanding of what it looks like before they report something to us.
Right. I used to do that too at the state mine inspector's office there. They were keeping track of, like abandoned mines and other, mine workings and stuff. They always ask people to put a picture in too, so they kind of see what things look like, helps out a little bit.
This is Commissioner Thorwald. Could you bring up those photos that I brought back from the AZOGCC on what one of the other states is doing that they've sent out? Very good. These are brochures that the state of Ohio have put out, and flyers, and they've tried to. Can you show them the other side? There's another photo that's there, and there'll be a third one after that as well. But these are what they've been putting out to the public. Continue on to the other slides. That's keep going. They're small pamphlets that they've been putting out, continue on. There's another slide, 2 more slides. Besides that, there's another one that shows their they're not drones that they're using. Some of the other states are also using drones to go out with equipment that measures whether there it is, the whether there was ever a pad there, whether there's any metal, and they've been using those to go around different areas around the state to check for wells. And also they put this out to the public so they know what they're doing and can help find them. So that's something else. One of the other states, each of the states are doing something a little different. Drones have been particularly used by a number of states to help find these things.
This is Bill. I got a quick comment.
Go right ahead, sir.
Okay, so kind of my experience in the field is, you know, usually, but not always, you have a drill pad. Usually, but not always, you might have some kind of a road or track leading in. You might find some kind of a capping monument, be it a little concrete circle or kind of circle, or maybe a, you know, welded iron pipe sticking out of the ground. But it might also really be nothing more than the old drill cuttings that quite often they just kind of scatter them around by shovel. So they can have a couple of different, you know, quite different looks, and you kind of have to be open to whatever you see as being evidence for there being an abandoned well there. That was my comment.
Any other comments or questions?
This is Commissioner Nations. I'm thinking now back to the material that Chris showed us. Now, we can't expect a rancher or a farmer or somebody living out in the urban rural areas to be able to access the internet. So there should be telephone numbers in this. For example, this. Now, what if people can't access the internet? Maybe they don't have a computer. And if they do, maybe they don't know how to do this. So at least a phone number, in addition to that, should be included in our stuff.
Well, I'm sorry, this is Administrator Schmidt. Yes, Commissioner Nations, I would imagine part of the community outreach program that Brooke and Heather and everybody are working on the team would include that, where we do postings or where we do some paper, you know, if it's paper or like brochures like Chairman Thorwald, we showed for Chairman Thorwald, that we would have a number where they can contact us, and it would probably be the commission number, but we might have a specialized number for the orphan wells themselves. But also, you know, I do agree, right? Not everybody has all the tools that we think they have, and so just having the fact that they can have a phone number that they can call. Yeah, so I would imagine that is definitely on our radar as thinking about that when we're in remote areas and stuff. So, yeah.
Heather, this is Commissioner Thorwald. Can you address that any further?
This is Brooke Bolger. So we have been working with the Department of Environmental Quality community liaisons. We've been working pretty closely with them for both the outreach plan and also so that they can inform their assigned community about the orphan well program and what's going on and how to report wells. And then we've also talked about one of the things we talked with other states about was doing a radio PSA, a television PSA, sending out letters to landowners where we think there might be orphan wells, or just anyone that may not know about it already. So we have other forms of communication that we have planned that don't involve social media or emails or anything like that.
Yeah, that looks good to me.
Commissioner Thorwald, again, a question for you. Since we mentioned earlier that we were almost finished with phase 1 of this, are we behind in the public relations, getting this out to the public? Because if we need people to go out to sites, we need to know where those sites are before the people can go out and before that phase of the contract ends, and how many sites we have to go to for how much that contract is going to cost us. Where are we with that?
With as far as phase 1, right? Yeah, right now we're finishing up phase 1, which would be the assessment phase, going into phase 2, which is, and I think we're right on track.
Again, Commissioner Thorwald, what I'm getting at is, if we are finished with phase 1, the assessment of these things, and we still haven't gotten out all the public, all of our gotten the public to notify us of other sites, isn't that a little bit putting the cart before the horse, in that if we don't know where the sites are from the public yet, if there are other sites like those 4 we've just found, how can the assessment team who's just finished or finishing know where to go to do anything about it? And then we have to rehire them to come back in. Am I thinking incorrectly?
I mean, Administrator, I don't know, maybe Heather, yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to step in to answer Commissioner Thorwald's question. So the Department of Interior grant that we received is a 3-year grant. So we're not behind schedule at all. We're definitely continuing along, as Brooke mentioned and Chris mentioned, with our community engagement plan. So there'll be a couple things happening at the same time, where the 13 contractors are out in the field obtaining the right of entry form, which is the next task that's set up. So they'll be working with the landowner, making sure that we have proper authority to enter the property and work with them to determine and identify the orphan well, which is the task 2 that we're in. But we'll continue community engagement through the life of the grant. So we'll be always updating the community engagement platform and the plans that we've created to make sure that we're reaching out to all sections of the state of Arizona. As mentioned, that's coming up. I don't think it's been addressed yet, but for item number 9B, Wendy Flood and Andrew Foss actually presented to the Arizona County Supervisors Association. So that attended all the 15 counties. There were representatives. So the county managers are aware of this program, and they took the video back, and we've offered to do individual meetings with those county supervisors, those board of supervisors as well. So that's where we're beginning that process and making sure that folks are aware of the orphan well tool. It's now on 2 different websites, the Arizona Oil and Gas Conservation Commission website and the AZOGCC website. So it's just the beginning of the community outreach that will last again for the life of the grant, if that answers that question.
Thank you. Was everybody able to understand Heather Krause all right? Any other questions before we move on? Administrator Schmidt, have you finished your section?
Yeah, I guess, Heather alluded to to 9B, which was that Wendy and Andrew did present to the Arizona County Supervisors Association about the program. And so Heather filled you in a little bit about that. But then in 9C, the Orphan Well Program web pages, which he did mention, we do have the web pages now, so that people can go there and get information about the Orphan Well Program at these sites. So with that, if there's no further questions, that would finish up my presentation up to this point, or summary of some of these different things and activities that have been going on in the Orphan Well Program for you all. So I will turn it over to the commission.
Commissioners, is there any other questions for Administrator Schmidt before we move on? Hearing none, let's move to item 10, budget update. Heather Krause, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If you could speak into the mic a little closer, it's really hard to hear you.
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So 10A Our fiscal year 23 permit revenue was $300. So that equates to 12 permits at $25 per application. So that's what we've done thus far in our fiscal year will end June 30th. For item 10B, the Department of Interior grant budget that we've allocated for this fiscal year was $9.2 million. It is a $25 million grant that we received through the Department of Interior, but that's just the allocation that we outlined for the budget for this fiscal year. For expenditures for this fiscal year, it's at $1.2 million. So that includes the 13 contractors that Chris, Administrator Schmidt referenced, and then also the 2 sub-awards, which is the Groundwater Protection Council, who's developing the RBDMS database for us, and also U of A, who's prepping those files, as we mentioned earlier. Did anyone have any questions? Any
with regard to what is the following year's budget for 2024?
Let me have to divide 25. I'd have to subtract 9.2 million from 25, then divide it again by 2. So I can get that for you. I don't have it off the top of my head. I apologize.
Not a problem. Any other questions before we move to item 11? Administrator Schmidt, do you want to talk about item 11?
Yes, item 11, it was a complaint that we received, an anonymous complaint that we had received on March 28th, 23, from an Apache County resident concerned with some geophysical exploration, seismic exploration that they were doing on what appeared to be their property. And so that concerned citizen or landowner called the commission and spoke to the acting administrator at the time, and talked about, you know, the concern and the activity that was happening on the property. And then after further discussion with the acting administrator, it seemed that it alleviated any concerns or comments or any questions or fears that the citizen had about any seismic activity that was occurring on the property. I don't know a lot of details about what exactly was occurring on the property because I was not the administrator at the time and I did not speak to this person. But from what I understand, the complaint was resolved amicably and there was no other follow-up required at that time. Is there any questions about that? Okay,
No question.
Yes.
Is there any other follow-up that's going to be done on that, or is that completed now?
I think that was closed. I think after the discussion with the acting administrator at the time, that the citizen or the landowner was satisfied with the response from the administrator, and that was documented. And so there appears to be no other follow-up required at this time.
Okay. Any questions before we move on? Okay, moving on to item 12, commission activities, meeting updates. I went in May to the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact in Oklahoma City for our annual business meeting. And there was a number of discussions, both on what we've already talked about with regard to how outreach to the public, what the federal government was going to do with regard to emission standards that they were looking at from EPA on power plants, discussion on sequestration, and a variety of other things. One of the things that were brought up was the Department of Interior formula grants and other grant applications, because we haven't gotten some of the second portions of that yet. And at the time, they said it would be weeks before we would still, let me rephrase that, it would be within weeks that we would get the updated grant application information and still be able to comment on that. So that should be happening literally any day at this point. For the rest of it, they said that we would be getting the draft application that we could comment on prior to the federal prior to the beginning of prior to the beginning of the next federal budget period, and that we would be able to put in the application prior to that so that there would be no award gap, and we would not have to lose personnel or find other ways to pay them. I apologize for my confusing way I said that. There was discussion on carbon credits as well, and tax credits associated that. And there was a resolution that was put forth by North Dakota, and all of the states have voted on it since. It was for a 45Q, and it was resolution 23-054, and it was to increase the credits to ask the federal government to increase the credits to $85 per ton. There was other discussion on carbon sequestration at pore space, what happens when there's injection of CO2 that migrates across state lines. There was discussion about who has liability, when that liability would end, how for pore space, and whether that how that could be insured to make that be able to move forward, to be able to make pore space work. And part of that discussion related to how long liability goes on after the conclusion of the injection phase. And typically we've been talking 10 years with that, where there's additional monitoring, and the company still has liability, or the insurance companies, before the state takes that over. What the discussion was about related to that was that if it got much past that point, companies as well as insurance companies were reluctant to engage in carbon storage or carbon sequestration at all, and how to get around that. The pore space discussion related to that, as far as who the liability of that, but also who owned that pore space. And in most cases, it was the surface landowner. But there are other discussions going on because it hasn't been completely resolved yet. For instance, here in Arizona, if we would take this is for pore space, and store hydrogen in helium, a former helium well that had been exhausted, that would work effectively. But who would own that pore space? Who would have control of that? And part of the discussion went back to who had originally pulled out the helium, how was that originally handled, versus the state, the surface owner having that. So that was not resolved. That was still ongoing discussions about that. And that was with the Law and Rules Committee, which I believe I will be vice chair of that starting at the next meeting. We have another committee on that met on nominating, which I'm on, and we had a vote on that, and we nominated 4 parties for the commission, as far as the states, the steering committee, the finance committee, the operational committee, and move forward from that. We discussed locations in orphan wells, and you saw some of that material earlier, how each of the states are handling that. We also discussed what the fees are associated with these carbon sequestration. An example of that, the state of Texas charges $25,000 for an application fee for a carbon storage sequestration project. They then charge another 2.5 cents per ton for the carbon that is injected, and then $10,000 per year basically a maintenance and monitoring fee for that. And that is through the term of the until the project is no longer in the private hands, so which would have been 10 years for most cases after they've stopped injecting CO2. In this case, for Texas, it's 3 years, and they have a cap on the amount of CO2 that can be injected, and that's 90% of the fracture point for the CO2. Any questions on that?
Commissioner Nations here.
Go ahead.
Are there actual carbon sequestration projects active?
Yes, there are at various different levels of development. Texas has several in the works, for instance. And that's the one off the top of my head.
Are they injecting into oil fields, or what's the process? I mean,
the injection hasn't started yet, but it appears to be a variety of different locations that they've determined will be able to handle the CO2 safely.
and would that be CO2 generated by power plants, or are they going to collect it in some other way?
Both. They're both looking at power plants, other emission sources, and air capture as well.
I see. Thank you.
And that's what those fees are related to. And that seems to be more of a, from what I can see, more of a standardized rate. That's, in other words, other states are looking at the same kinds of fees for that. And part of the reason is because there's a higher amount of potential revenue from the carbon sequestration, and liability is taken into consideration in that. So from what I can see, that would be also applicable rates potentially here in Arizona. Any other questions on that? And let's move on to item 13 on the agenda. This is by Chris Schmidt and myself. The Railroad Commission of Texas has been giving a series of virtual trainings for the Oil and Gas Commission, DEQ, State Land, DWR, and the AG's office, as well as the Geologic Survey. I arranged this with the state of Texas, with the Railroad Commission, to provide this, and we developed there was a list of, can you display it, the list of the training schedule? Not all the commissioners were invited to this, although you will be able to go back and see the videos. These are all being recorded. The reason you were not all invited to it, Commissioner Firebrand was the only commissioner invited, because it would have we would have had to put out notice for each of the meetings of a commission meeting, and it just wasn't feasible to do that. So what we've with the recordings, you'll be able to go out and take a look at each one of them. Commissioner Firebrand, do you want to comment on what you've seen so far and what you thought?
No, actually, I mean, obviously you got a whole variety of training videos, you know, everything from application, basic geology, geophysics, to end of, you know, the end of exploration, end of a drill hole life. Quite a variety of things in there. Not all of them capture my heart, but they were all interesting in their own way. And I really think it would be good if it were made available for everybody. I missed two because of traveling, and I want to go back and catch those two. I've learned to appreciate enough that I do want to go back and you know, catch what I missed. So I think that was really a good effort. And I appreciate your effort to make this happen.
These will eventually be available with a link from our website. It'll either be on YouTube or directly out of the site. And this should happen fairly quickly, I would imagine. The technical team is working on that right now to make this make it available to all of us internally to have. It will not be made public. The part of the thing, when you look on that schedule, you see blanks, and what those are was if there was additional information that came out of the meeting where we wanted to expand on a particular subject, those things could be added. Or if there was something that was not addressed that we needed to address in more detail or just completely address, we could put in those other meetings. And so we're evaluating it after every meeting to determine if it's covering everything we would want. And it's a broad section. And how it was initially determined was that DEQ, oil and gas team met and determined, here are the things that we want to know more about, we want to be more effective in. And the goal is to allow everybody across the board to be able to be on the same page, seeing the same things, and understand, having the same level of understanding. So I think that is transpiring so far. Any questions about that? I might add, Texas has been very good to us about this. They are not charging us for this service. There's going to be somebody coming down in the near future from Texas to carry this forward a step and be more specific about things here. But to Texas, to give you a comparison, plugs somewhere between 1,800 wells a year. So we're talking about 240 some. They have a little bit more experience than we do. They're the #1 producing state for oil and gas in the country. They have helium. We just had a discussion yesterday on CO2, and we're going to be talking about hydrogen storage. As you can see, some of that with the June 8th was CO2 cavern storage. Here in Arizona, the salt domes, for instance, are some of the deepest in the entire world. So the salt formations. So we have a lot of capacity here to do certain things. So if there's any training anybody wants to see, whether you've been on the calls, commissioners, or not, but you'd like to see in future videos, please let staff know so we can make sure that those trainings are available to everyone.
Chairman Thorwald, a quick point.
Go ahead.
I've been so impressed with it. I wonder if you're in your position, if there are states that do not have this or do not know about it, if you could kind of spread the knowledge that
this is exclusive. This is not available. This is exclusively for us here in Arizona by the state of Texas, the Railroad Commission. They provided exclusive to us here in Arizona.
Great. Okay. I'm really complimentary, and I think it'd be good if these were made available to the widest population possible. I'll leave it at that.
Texas has been doing work with the AZOGCC for some years as far as helping states and providing training. So I discussed this with the Texas commissioners, and they're the ones that set it up for us. And this is tailored specifically to Arizona. So other states would have, there would need to be changes for it for other states, but that's up to the state of Texas. They've made this available to us to use internally and not externally to other states or to the public. Any other questions or comments? Chris, do you have any comments or staff on how you felt the training has been?
I have a quick comment. I believe the trainings have been quite informative in covering the different topics and some of the issues surrounding, some of how they're handling, permitting and monitoring and all of those things, especially like on the CO2 and stuff. And so I know there's some stuff yet to do, but it's been some great information. So I certainly appreciate them and their willingness to put it together for us. Yeah.
David Haig, I know you've been in all the meetings as well. What are your thoughts?
I agree with the, it's been very informative, broad scale, not too detailed, but still covers most of the topics. So I've appreciated it.
Fantastic. Any other questions on this or comments? Hearing none, let's move on to the next one. Tribal community update. Chris, Administrator Schmidt, do you want to talk about that?
Yes. We are working with the Office of Navajo and Hopi Indian Relocation, the ONHIR, to receive access for the characterization of potential orphan wells. So we're kind of closely working with that organization, with them to be able to work towards any identification of wells that we might find in their purview, how to gain access and what would be required with that. And so I would assume it's more of a partnership relationship. And so that's probably all I have right now. But I don't know if Heather or Brooke or Andrew might have any further information that you've seen from some of your interactions with them.
This is Commissioner Thorwald. Let me just jump in on that. The Navajo Nation, nor the wells that we're looking at, really don't involve the Hopi Nation in this. These are on Oneer land. Oneer land is not owned by the Navajo Nation or the Hopi Nation or the state. It's individual land that's been bought up by a special entity of the federal government that will eventually be transferred to the Navajo and Hopi Nation. We have engaged in communications with the Navajo Nation's Department of Justice and their oil group to talk about who would have access to review the potential for plugging and abandoning, checking that out to confirm that it did need it, didn't need it, what the status was. Part of also was inspection on what is on Navajo land. That was sent to the president of the Navajo Nation prior to his departure when they had the election. He did not sign it. It had been approved by their council, and it's been left up to the new president to sign. He has not signed it. So what we ended up doing was talking directly to Oneer. Oneer gave us official approval unilaterally, which they have the authority to do, to go on to the Oneer land to evaluate the various sites. Once we've evaluated those sites to see and determined what is necessary, then we will have to go back to Oneer and the Navajo Nation for approval if something needs to be done.
Chairman Thorwald, I do have additional information regarding the Oneer land. So we have been working with them.
And who's speaking?
Oh, so sorry. My name is Heather Prowse. I'm the Air Quality Division Deputy Director.
Yes.
So a quick update on the Oneer lands. We've been working with them. They have about 17 wells that we believe to be orphan wells. And there's 2 contractors that are assigned to those wells. So we've been working with them, the folks at Oneer, to schedule a meeting with the contractors and to discuss those wells and to discuss the right of entry.
Any questions on that? Any comments? Thank you. Moving on to number 15, Arizona Board of Regents. I've been discussing the Arizona Board of Regents, and I've been talking about special program they have for projects. They have a separate fund that they use, and it's used within the different universities for different projects. And we've been talking about a number of projects that they might be able to use that be related to oil and gas. The former director of DEQ, Miziel, had made that introduction for us. And one of the things we've been talking about is CO2 use in greenhouses, produced water desalinization to be used in greenhouses that use hydroponics. How, of course, that converts it into the air, what amounts needed to be used, the heating and cooling from abandoned wells that using ground loop or open loop geothermal systems to reduce the cost. A variety, solar, a variety of different things, all of which have been tested in the past, but never assimilated into the same project, and how that compares to traditional agricultural services here in the state. That type of thing, hydroponics, for instance, when CO2 is introduced in it, it more than doubles the growth of the crops. You don't need the fertilizers that you normally need to do that. So how does and that uses roughly 8% of the normal water usages. So coupled with putting those kinds of things into an area where we already have CO2 and already have drilling, does that benefit the state of Arizona for water reduction and the way to eliminate greenhouse gases and ways to get rid of produced water? So that's part of that discussion we're going. We're also, and I'm throwing this out to the commissioners, looking at other things, projects that we think need to be resolved to help, that we could submit to them for their consideration. So if you think of anything, let us know. And the previous one I mentioned, they will compare that, if they do take that on, to traditional growth and what crops could be put into that, and the financial feasibility of that compared to traditional growth, and the benefits in water savings to Arizona. Since I don't remember the new numbers on it, but Arizona used to use somewhere in the 90 percentiles of all the water used in the state for agriculture, and I think it's in the 70s somewhere right now. And this certainly wouldn't reduce it down to 8% because you can't use all crops in it. But if something like that could reduce it down, we could drop another 20% of our water. It would be beneficial. And this came about from how do we get rid of produced water, other ways to do with CO2 and the sequestration and that type of thing. Any questions on that? Going on to B, aquifer protection permits. Again, that goes to injection of produced water, and how we can better effectively deal with this. There is an exemption that EPA has for produced water that was put in place about a year ago. How does that fit into what we're currently doing in the state and the laws with regard to everything is drinkable water? So we've been looking at that and how that might work with regard to re-injecting CO2 back into the same formation. This is things we also need to discuss more with DWR and land, and how we might be able to move forward with this. Those discussions I've been having already with DEQ, and we'll be having more on this. And is there any questions on that? I forgot something that I would like to go back, if nobody minds, to the carbon sequestration that I think was important earlier on in the meeting. That was item number 12.2 and 12.3. One of the things that was also discussed at AZOGCC related to this, and we have this potential issue in eastern Arizona along the border with New Mexico. And the CO2 fields there also extend over into New Mexico. What is the potential of migration of injected CO2 into New Mexico? Who has the authority with it? How does the EPA get involved with that? And part of that has to deal with how we deal with the pore space and the liabilities of all of that. That is another thing that we are in discussions with New Mexico and with EPA on. And I just thought you should be aware of that. I apologize that I forgot that. Is there any other questions? Comments? Hearing none, let's move on to 16, call to the public. Is there anybody in the public that would like to address the commission? We have this live on YouTube, so it'll take a few moments for somebody. We need to give a few minutes for somebody to respond.
I had a question, David Haig from the Arizona State Land Department. Did the website change a little bit? I noticed that when looking in permits, it goes to the map. It doesn't have the list of the most recent permits that have been issued. Was that a change to the website?
Yeah, this is Brooke Bolger. So we found that we had two separate places that we had to put permits on the website. And so to reduce work for our team, we consolidated all to the GIS map. You can still find all permit documents or any other well information on the GIS map. We just made it one location instead of two.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody in the public that has any comments or questions? Hearing none, let's move on to 17. Is there anything that commissioners would like to see on the future meeting agenda?
This Commissioner Nations here. I'd like to request that table I was talking about and listing the wells and all the information that we have available. I'd like to see that. I'd like to get a report on that.
Fantastic. Staff, please note that. Anybody else? Any other requests for future meetings? Things on for the future meeting. Also, well, no, is there anything else we would, how about a more defined report on what the plugging and abandoning process is and where we are on that, something that shows a bit more of what's going on as we move forward?
I would like to endorse that.
Okay. Anything else from anybody? Okay, moving on to 18, announcements. What are anybody have any announcements? What about the meeting schedule? We're talking about every 6 weeks for a meeting throughout the rest of the year. Is that still the current plan?
Quick comment. We've, I've been on this for years, and the schedule we had seemed to work fine, and we get everything covered in an hour and a half, and now things are more complicated. I don't know if we should think about a more frequent meeting, or maybe things are just so complicated that however many meetings we have, it just takes a certain amount of time to work through it. So I'll throw that out, and I'm open personally.
What about Commissioner Nations?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand what Bill said.
Oh, he was just saying this meeting today, for instance, took longer. There was more
Oh, yeah,
complexity.
I heard that. I think every 6 weeks is still fine.
Okay. Commissioner Cooper.
Just a general comment that a lot of the discussion, a lot of the report items turn into discussion items, and that's really one of the reasons the meetings are dragging on a little farther. It's a report, it's not a discussion matter.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, is every 6 weeks then acceptable to everybody? Well, I actually, you don't need to say that because that's an announcement. So we'll just go along on that basis. Anything else? Any other announcements? In that case, let's move on to item 19, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The meeting of the Arizona Oil and Gas Conservation Commission is concluded. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.